Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Just to introduce myself at the beginning, I am Beth. I am effectively tech support on behalf of the Princess and Bear wines this evening. There will be 3 stages of the tasting that the lovely Kate is going to do for you tonight. At the end of each of the stages, we will have an opportunity for you to participate, ask questions, answer questions, and to get involved. And on that note, I will hand you over to the lovely Carol.
Hi, everybody. Oh my gosh, it's so great to
see everybody.
Face. Hi, this is so fun. I wanted primarily to introduce the amazing Kate Wardell and tell you that she's lived here in the Languedoc since 2007. And Kate is British, but she grew up in Switzerland. And she attended the very prestigious Hotel Écolier de Tourisme, which is the best hotel and restaurant training school in the world. And she went there, and she's been in hospitality her whole life. She founded Venitude, which is a wine education school. And she also works at a company called Vin en Vacances, which if you ever come to the Languedoc, which we hope you will, she takes people on tours and provides wine education as well as historical and cultural information, not just in the Languedoc, but they go to also Spain and Bordeaux. And Marcel van Balen is on this call. And Marcel, hi Marcel. Marcel has taken groups of people. He took a whole group of women somewhere like to the Rhone Valley or something. But anyway, they do all kinds of wine education. And what we're going to do tonight is the systematic approach to tasting, which might seem like a little bit of a technical tasting, which it is, but the way you can use it for yourself that can really make a difference for you is that it can help you understand your own palate. And when you like a wine, when you taste something you like, if you go through this tasting protocol that Kate's going to run you through, at the end of it, you'll understand why you like the wine that you're drinking. And the other thing it can help you do is expand your palate, because if you taste something and it's not something that you're really used to tasting, you will still have a way that you can analyze the wine and know this is a really well-made wine. I'm not used to this wine, but just to help you explore a little bit, which is one of the things that we're really hoping to do, is help people expand their palates. About this wine, and as you can see, we've already had a sip because it's 10 o'clock at night here. Wine.
We may have had a little more than a sip.
Well, not much. This wine, La Corde Parfait. Steve and I were invited to a tasting in Paris of the appellation. This wine comes from an appellation called Fitou. It was the first appellation in the Languedoc.
Let's go talk about that.
Yeah, but we were invited to this this tasting. So we did kind of a blitz tasting where they had about 25 wines, and we went just around quickly and tasted them, swirled them, and spit them. And this wine stood out far above any of the other ones that we tasted. So we chose it, and it's a cooperative wine. I won't go into too much detail about that, but it's made by a collective that's owned jointly by a bunch of different wine growers. And it's the only cooperative wine that we have, because the rest of our wines are from family farmers who also make their own wines. But this one is from a cooperative, and we chose it because it was outstanding. And after we chose it, it got the gold medal from that event. So with that, I'll turn you over into the capable hands of the lovely, knowledgeable, and fun Kate Wardell.
Thank you, Carol. Well, first of all, hello, everybody. I know that you can't say hello back. So we're going to break this evening down into, essentially into 3 bits with a conclusion at the end is probably the safest way to do this. So as Carol was saying, the systematic approach to tasting is really a way for you to make fewer poor choices in your purchasing.
It's not necessarily about me being super rigid and sort of, you know, waving the stick at you going, tell me how much tannin there is in this wine. It doesn't really matter, because I don't know how many people we are on this call, Beth, like 16 people or something like that.
25 at the moment.
Oh, holy mackerel. Okay, so more than that. So it doesn't really matter what we all truly, whether we truly calibrate our palates on one wine. That would come if we did this once a week, every week for the rest of the year. I mean, who knows how long lockdown's going to last, but we could be here every month, let's be honest. And at the end of that, that period of time, perhaps we would have calibrated our palates. But it's not so much about getting the technical data right, it's more about getting more of a feel for it. And it's also about learning that you can't send a boy to do a man's job. Now, I used this phrase when we were doing our little kind of chat together this afternoon. And it's about understanding that there are two kinds of wines and they're made for two very distinct purposes. Don't send, you know, a Bordeaux to pair up with some pretty little Mont Marinière, and don't send a Pinot Grigio to go and have fun with a Côte de Boeuf or a great big T-bone steak. Find the right matches. Don't go trying to drink Apéro wines that have got a ton of oak in them, because you're just going to struggle and it's not going to be much fun. Find the right wine for the job. So I want to pick up real quick on something that Carol said in her introduction, because I know that as followers of The Princess and the Bear, you guys are all very keen to be involved in following the stories of the small vignerons, the small winemakers of this region that Carol and Steve love to back. And I think, you know, hats off to those guys for supporting these small winemakers, because really that's where the untold quality is in this region. And Languedoc for me really is, it's probably the region in France that still represents amazing value for money. You can still pick up great bargains here. But I just want to say that as a cooperative wine, this wine is really a little bit different. Cooperative winemaking in the Languedoc had historically been the norm. We were a region of grape growers, not a region of winemakers. And so we've had to learn, we've had to think pretty fast on our feet over the last 20, 25 years, because we've been playing catch up with the new world. California came in, Oregon came in, Australia came in, New Zealand came in. South Africa hates being classed as part of the new world, so I'm going to annoy them and tell them that they are. So, you know, all these countries were plowing ahead with fantastic new clean winemaking techniques and producing outstanding wines at price points that big French regions were struggling to match. Along came Languedoc, and here was our opportunity. So the wine that we're going to try today is unique in the cooperative market, insofar as it is parcel selected grapes, hand picked, and for a cooperative wine, it's got some fairly complex and interesting winemaking techniques applied to it. So I'm sure you've had a look at the tasting notes for the wine. You know that it's a 3 grape blend, which is a requirement in the appellation of Fitou. It must be at least 3 varietals. So we have Carignan and we have Syrah, both of which are reductive grapes. So they require quite a lot of pigeage, quite a lot of punch down, quite a lot of remontage or pump over. So oxygenation during the fermentation process. And we have Grenache, which is the complete opposite. It's oxidative. So we try not to do too much oxygen exposure during the fermentation with Grenache. To that end, also this wine has had 30% of it that Syrah has also spent time in new oak. So we're expecting to see influence of new oak here. So the Carignan also had some semi-carbonic maceration. So we've not just got chuck it in a tin and see what comes out and stick it in a bottle at the end. We've actually got some fairly advanced winemaking and complicated winemaking techniques taking place in a bottle of cooperative wine, which is, okay, I'm going to say not impossible, but quite unusual. So that's the kind of blurb out of the way. Now let's deal with the SATs. So we've got, and you guys should have, a lexicon of descriptors. And I'm going to recommend, for the purposes of just getting to know one another, although it's just me talking at you at the moment, but we will get to know one another, that for the purposes of the tasting, that we think in colour. which it's not necessarily obvious, but obviously from this list of primary aromas and flavors for a red wine, we're not going to be looking really at green fruit, citrus fruit, stone fruit, or tropical fruit. We are going to be looking at red fruit, black fruit, potentially dried fruit, potentially herbaceous, potentially herbal, potentially spices. And we need to decide what the primary smells are, what the primary tastes are, and whether the nature of the fruit is underripe, just about ripe, or is it even overripe? Is it baked? Is it fresh? Is it stewed? So all these things to think about in terms of how we perceive the fruit flavors in a wine. So primary flavors are what we associate with the character of the fruit. So generally speaking, it's fruit and it's floral. Secondary aromas and flavors are what we as human beings do when we intervene on the winemaking process. So that could be the malolactic fermentation. That could be us putting red wines into oak barrels. That could be us leaving white wines on lees, for example. So secondary aromas are what we as humans do that impact the winemaking process. And then tertiary aromas and flavors. You've got fruit development for red and white wines, bottle age development for red and white wines, and the question about whether or not there is any deliberate oxidation. If you're in any shadow of a doubt about what I mean by that, stick your nose in a glass of Oloroso sherry. That's deliberately oxidized, okay? There aren't so many wines that are commonplace, and I'm not sure that Steve and Carol have got any on their list that are deliberately oxidized. So, you know, just put that one to the side for the moment. But in terms of fruit development, that's where we're looking at fruit going from fresh fruit to more cooked fruit or dried fruit. And with bottle age, that's where we get these, what we call the tertiary aromas, where, you know, you've heard people say, oh, it smells like, or I've heard people say, it smells like sweaty saddle, or it smells like a cigar box, or it smells like farmyard, or it smells like cured meats, things like that. So you've got all these kind of tertiary flavors, and that's what happens as the phenols in the wine evolve over time. So we need to decide about these aromas and about these flavors when we try the wine. The first thing that we need to do is we need to have a look at document 2, in fact, which is the appearance of the wine. According to the lexicon, when we're talking about red wines, it's going to fall into really and truly one of 3 densities of color and 4 ranges of color. If you look straight down through the glass, pour some wine into the glass, look straight down through it. If you can see straight down through to the stem, it's pale. If you can just about make out the stem, but you couldn't read anything through it, you're in the kind of medium range. And if you can't even see the stem, it's deep. The range of color for red wines goes purple, ruby, garnet, tawny. Are we all familiar with the concept that as red wines age, they fade in color and get lighter, whereas white wines, actually the opposite is true. They get darker in color as they age. So how do you know whether it's purple, ruby, or garnet? Because if it's tawny, well, you're going to know it's tawny because it's sort of verging on brown. But how do you know the difference between purple, ruby, and garnet? Quite straightforward. If you can clearly discern a blue tinge to the wine, this generally happens with very youthful wines. You're probably in purple. If you can see a clear red, you're in ruby. And if you can see tinges of orange or brown, and this usually happens with older wines, then you're falling into garnet. So that's essentially how we decide. Now I have, and we're not going to reveal it just yet, we're going to be a little bit of a tease, I'm afraid. I have actually already prepared a tasting note for this wine. So what I'd like you guys to do, if you would be so kind, and remember, there's there's no real wrong answer tonight. There's no real wrong answer anytime you try a glass of wine, because your motto in life should be drink what you like. So, you know, there's not going to be any judgment here, but I'd like you guys to take make an assessment on what you think the intensity and the color of this wine is, and we'll see how you all do at the end. Okay? Any questions about appearance?
Well, we do have one from Bridget. Bridget, you're unmuted.
Hi,
Hello,
everyone.
Bridget.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you so much. I'm wondering on document 2, with the appearance, why the different colors are grouped together, like lemon, ruby pink, or gold garnet salmon. Like, what's the order? Like you mentioned, the order was
horizontal rather than vertical.
okay.
So where you've got on the left-hand side, you've got white, red, and green. Yeah. So for white wines, we can go lemon green, lemon, gold, amber, brown. For reds, purple, ruby, garnet, tawny, brown. And for rosés, pink, salmon, orange. So we go horizontally, not vertically.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Beth, I had one question for Kate, which was, when we did a training before, Kate, you told us something about if you can see a clear edge right at the edge of the wine when you tip it.
Yes.
Can you discuss that?
Yeah, sure. So another way, if you're not, I mean, the looking through the stem should give you a pretty accurate read. And actually, this is probably easier to do with a white wine, which is a little bit more tricky. And it's difficult for me to do because I haven't got any natural light, but I will endeavor to show you what I mean. And I'm just going to try and figure out how to do it with the light that I've got here. So this is a bit difficult. When you tip your glass through 45 degrees, what will happen is you will end up with a sort of watery lip here around the very, where the level of the wine comes in your glass, okay? Depending on how broad that watery lip is, will also give you an indication as to the density of the color or the intensity of the color. So if the color bleeds all the way to the level of the wine, where the wine meets the glass, it's deep. If you have a little watery rim, and you can see, a medium sort of watery rim, that's going to be in medium. And if you have a core in the center of your glass and then a wide, clear sweep around the edge, then it's going to be pale.
We have another question from Leslie Olson. If I can just unmute Leslie so she can join us.
Hi, well, thank you so much for doing this. I'm having a ball already. I was a little bit wondering about what kind of glass is best to review. And the reason is that we poured a bit of the wine in a stemless glass for my husband that has a very smooth bowl. And then we also poured some in a stemmed glass. And so it seemed for him like he could see, right? He thought it was more medium, and I thought mine was deep because I couldn't see the stem. And I just am not sure, are we using the right glasses?
You know what, that's a great question. And it had never even occurred to me that somebody would be out there using a stemless glass tonight. I quite like them, to be perfectly honest with you, but it does make trying to find a stem difficult if you haven't got one. I'm using a standard ISO tasting glass. Okay, it's a kind of tulip-shaped glass. So we've got a bowl with a wide point, which then narrows as it comes up towards the rim. What I would say to you is this. When you're going to be doing tasting for an evaluation purpose, try and use the same glass every time. It's very easy, and my colleague Marcel van Balen is on this call, and he and I have done this so many times, it beggars belief. There are several glass producers like Riedel, like Jotswiesel, like Cousin, who actually produce different styles of glass for different styles of wine. Well, if you keep changing the equipment that you use, you're going to keep changing the results that you get. So you need to pick a style of glass to taste in and use that for whatever it is that you're tasting. Okay, now it's fine to use a stemless glass. If you're going to use a stemless glass, probably tipping the glass to 45 degrees is an easier read, obviously, to try and decipher the color. Perfectly okay with a stemless glass. I've got them. I like them. I like them because I'm also very klutzy and I knock things over on dining room tables. And it's much more difficult to knock over a stemless glass than it is to knock over one of these. So good on you for using a stemless. I'm all with that. But yeah, for the purposes of tasting, an ISO standard glass is great. If you haven't got an ISO standard glass, try and use a sort of tulip shaped glass.
Oh, got tulip.
Okay. Does that help?
Yes, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Good.
No more hands, Kate.
Okay, perfect. So let's have a smell. So what we've got here is a 5-point scale, but I do want you to remember that if you can sort of put into your brain bank, a light intensity is one where you've got to swirl it and you're really digging around trying to find some fruit. Okay. Medium minus is you still had to give it a swirl and you can probably pick some bits and pieces out if you put under pressure. Medium is you've swirled it and yes, there is stuff there. Medium plus is, well, I wasn't too sure, but I gave it a swirl and now I can get a ton. And pronounced is, I've got it 3 inches from my nose and I already know what I can smell. So what have we got? What have we got here? Well, I don't have to get too close to this wine to be able to pick out plenty of aromas and plenty of different clusters. So if you go back to what we were talking about originally with the lexicon, to me, the things that jump out of this glass is I can definitely smell lots and lots of black fruit, which is very, very typical, very characteristic for Syrah. So there's blackberries, there's brambles, there's black currant. There is also some red fruit kicking around in there too, because Grenache is typically a red fruit precursor, and so is Carignan, in fact. There's also a whiff. I'm going to use that word quite judiciously though, because that makes me sound a bit like an idiot, and I can do that quite well without resorting to wine terminology. But there is definitely a mark of wood on this wine. Okay, it's not, I don't feel like I've been smacked around the head with a 2x4, but I can definitely identify oak in this wine. Okay. I can also start to pick up some of those more tertiary characteristics. Like, I think this wine is actually quite gamey. It's quite savory. So it's starting to evolve. And what is it? 2016. So it's a 4-year-old wine, and it's starting now to really show its potential, I think. So we have a choice. Do we think the nose is youthful? Do we think it's developing? Do we think it's fully developed? Or do we think it's had it? Well, I can get primary flavors, secondary flavors, aromas, and I can just about begin to smell the beginnings of tertiary. So it is youthful, but it is already developing. Okay, so we're already in a sort of developing state. Don't worry if I say I smell blackcurrant and you smell blueberries. Nobody is going to come round with a fine, okay? It's not the end of the world. If you can, or if you have a box set called Le Nez du Vin, which means the nose of the wine.
I'll go get it.
It's a really helpful little tool. I guess they're probably around about 150 bucks. So they're not like super cheap, but you get 24 samples of what look like little perfume bottles. And they are concentrated essences of different fruits and flowers. And it will really help you to train your nose, because your sense, there we go, your sense of smell is infinitely more acute than your sense of taste. Your sense of smell, if I crush a strawberry and stick it, and you're blindfolded, and stick it under your nose, you will be able to say to me, Kate, that's a strawberry. But if I put a strawberry uncrushed on your tongue, you'll probably be able to say to me, Kate, that's a soft summer fruit, but possibly not tell me which one it is. So make friends with your nose, get to know these clusters. The other trick is, when I was saying, you know, think in color. If you think you can smell a blackberry, the chances are you can probably smell a black cherry, or a black plum, or a black currant, or some other member of the black fruit family. The trick is to try and pick up all of the different clusters that you can from the 3 key areas. So identify the fruit and flowers, identify whether there's any oak, and then identify whether there's any development. Okay, so before we start slurping, anyone got any questions on aromas?
I think we might have one. 1 second. It's Bridget, so I'll just unmute Bridget for you. There you go.
Hi, Bridget.
Hello. Can you just say one more time what you were saying about the primary, secondary, and tertiary, and like how far the glass is away, like that whole piece? Can you say that again, just so I can understand?
I will do my best. Okay. So in terms of aromas and flavors, we break them down into 3 categories. So primary aromas and flavors deal with fruit and flowers, broadly speaking. Secondary aromas and flavors deal with how we as human beings intervene on the winemaking process. So are we putting the wine into oak? Are we doing lees stirring? Are we putting the wine through malolactic? Are we reducing the fermentation temperature? So it's things that we do that impact the style of the wine. And the tertiary flavors and aromas are essentially what happens as the wine ages in the bottle.
I think she had actually muted herself again, so I'm just going to check we're okay. Oh, we're getting a thumbs up and an okay sign. That looks like it's promising. I think we're good.
Super. Okay. Thank you, Bridget. Thanks for your question. So
I have one question. What comments do you have about alcohol on the nose? Like, in addition to all the aromas, sometimes our wine's been open now for a couple of hours, but sometimes when you first smell the wine, there's a lot of alcohol in the nose. How does that impact the assessment of the aromas?
Well, you have to try your very best. This is not an ideal answer, but you have to try your very best to park the alcohol. We all know, because we've all got the fiche technique for this particular wine, that, or I'm guessing that we do, and if we don't, I'm about to ruin it for everyone, that this particular wine is 14.5%. So in terms of its alcohol rating, when we get onto the palate, it's going to fall into the high alcohol. Anything over 14% is classed as high alcohol. So what we tend to get when we can smell alcohol is what we call phenol alcohol. And that's really the alcohol that we get off fruit ripeness. It's different to the burn that you can get from badly integrated alcohol. Okay, so when you can smell the alcohol, it's probably because you've got super ripe fruit. You can sometimes get the same thing off a Napa cab, for example. You know, if you get a really beautiful 14.5% or 14% Napa cab, where they've got almost overripe fruit. It's just almost gone. It's that the ultimate peach moment. You know, you have a peach in your peach bowl for a week. You look at it every day and go, "It's not ready. It's not ready. It's not ready." You turn your back, put the kettle on, come back, and it's a pile of mush. Right? It's that ultimate moment of ripeness. That's what we're looking for. But that's also what will give you the smell of phenol alcohol. And Grenache, which is a grape that can attain high alcohol very quickly, is always a key pointer for being able to smell alcohol in a wine. It's a high phenol grape. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so I've been blabbering on for I don't know how long. You can actually try some now, everybody, which is lovely. Off we go. Let's have a little slurp. Okay. Before we kick off on the palate section of the SAT, I just want to address two things that we as wine consumers often conflate. We often misidentify dryness and tannin and fruit and sweet. We get those two things a little muddled up. In France, table wines are, broadly speaking, made with less than 2 grams of residual sugar, which identifies them as dry. This is still table wines we're talking about. Obviously, if we go gallivanting off into the realms of Cremant and Champagne, that's a whole other story where you can have 10 grams of sugar and still be dry. In a still table wine, less than 2 grams of sugar, we're dry. Dry is not the same as tannin. Tannin gives you a sensation of drying in your mouth, but it hasn't got anything to do with the residual sugar. Okay, is everybody okay with that? Good. You can come back and grill me on it afterwards. So the wine is dry. Has everybody here been taught how to test for acidity? Can everybody give me a thumbs up or a wave?
There's
No?
thumbs down
No.
coming your way. There's a lot of thumbs down.
Okay, all right. So I'm gonna teach you how to test for acidity. So we tend to identify acidity right in here, kind of where your jaw meets your ear. That place where if you press, actually it makes you kind of ear hurt and throat hurt and everything hurt. So don't do it too hard. We have in the UK, when I was a kid, we had a sweet called opal fruits, which I think are now called Starburst. I don't know if you have those in the US, but they are like little chewing candies, and they are all made with citrus fruit flavors like lemon, lime, orange. And the logo, the kind of branding logo for Starburst was made to make your mouth water, because that's what citric acid does. It makes your mouth water. So we identify acid back here. Now, I'm going to go first, so I'll look like the idiot. You can all turn your backs to me when you do this if you don't want me to watch you doing it. I want you to take a really sort of half-decent swig of this wine, and I want you to give it a really good chew. Pretend like it's Listerine mouthwash. I want you to give it a really, really good chew. And once you've swallowed it, because I'm assuming nobody's spitting, where else have we got to go? Once you've swallowed it, see how your mouth waters, okay? See how fast your mouth waters, and see how many times you've got to swallow to get rid of the water that the acid produces, because acid will come in waves. Okay? Right, cheers. Let's have a go. Well, I had to swallow 3 times to get rid of all the mouth wateriness. Just a little make a little mental note, because remember, of course, acidity here is also on a 5-point scale from low, medium minus, medium, medium plus to high. To give you a sort of point of reference here, low tannins, we're thinking about something like Gamay, Beaujolais, something like that. High tannins, we're talking about kind of the gum stripping sensation of a really huge Barolo, a young Barolo, okay? Or a huge Negro Amaro or a Nero d'Avola, some huge big Italian beastie that's just got buckets and buckets and buckets of tannin. So there we go. So tannin, the tannins are quite ripe. In fact, they're quite high, but they are very, what I would almost call them chalky, like powdery. They're not unpleasant at all. They're really ripe and quite delicious. Very nice. Alcohol, we've already discussed at 14.5. I'm afraid this is probably just the 1 bottle this evening, rather than, you know, a nice Cabernet Riesling where I might get away with 2, just the 1 bottle. And body, the body is the sensation that it creates, the weight of the wine in your mouth, okay? So again, I'm not going to tell you exactly what I'm thinking, even though I've now had 2 big slurps, and I could be prone to give away secrets now, because I have actually written a tasting note for this. The FI that comes underneath body stands for flavor intensity. So if you remember when we were talking about the nose, when we were talking about aroma, we decided that it was a pronounced aroma on the nose. So the question is, does the wine walk the walk or just talk the talk? So does it promise a lot on the nose and then under-deliver on the palate, or does it match in the glass what it promises on the nose? Flavor characteristics, do we get the same flavors in our glass as we smelt before we tasted? Are we getting all the stuff from the primary groups? Are we still tasting the things from the secondary groups? And are we still determined that this wine has got another journey to go on? Is it going to evolve even further? And then lastly, on the palate, how long does it linger with you? A million wine teachers will give you a million ways to do this. I tend to do it just by a count back. How long the flavor of the fruit stays with me. Not the acid, not the alcohol, just the fruit. And if it's more than about 3 seconds, 3 or 4 seconds, then we're into a pretty decent finish. Okay. The conclusions are maybe for another day, because I know Carol and Steve want to keep this as fairly sort of short and punchy for the first go round. But the conclusions are: is the wine poor, acceptable, faulty? Is it good? Is it very good? Or is it outstanding? Can I drink this now? Do I have to keep this for 10 years before I try another bottle? Has it already lost its way and I need to just use it as Drano? What's the deal with this wine? So for me, I could say you could drink this now, but it has got potential for further aging, which is PFA. Drink now, potential for further aging. Drink now, NPNFA is drink now, no potential for further aging, which if that was the case, this wine would have reached its high point and would now be on the slow journey down the hill, okay? So in terms of quality, we measure quality on 4 key points: on balance, on length, on intensity, and on complexity. There we go.
Lovely faces.
Hello, gorgeous people again. And Can somebody give me a wave? If I tell you, if I give you the criteria that if the wine is balanced, has length, has intensity, and has complexity, it will be rated as an outstanding wine. If it has 3 of those 4 things, it's a very good wine. If it only has 2 of those things, it's a good wine. And if it has just 1 of those things, it's an acceptable wine. Now, there's nothing wrong with an acceptable wine. There's an awful lot more better about an outstanding one, but there's nothing wrong with an acceptable wine. So who'd like to give me a wave and tell me what they think this wine might be in terms of a quality rating? Who's going to be brave? Yeah, there's a good man.
Listed as Marla, I'm unmuting you.
That would be Marla. I'm Dave, but
Hey,
that's
Dave.
okay. I'm going to throw it out that it's very good.
Okay, what do you think it's lacking?
For me, complexity.
Okay, what specifically do you want it to have more of?
On my palate, I taste maybe 2 fruit. I taste, for me, what did I put down? Black cherry and blackberry.
Mm-hmm.
And so for me to say that it was complex, I would want those to be broader and maybe a 3rd in there to support it.
Fair comment. Do you agree with me that you can identify the influence of oak?
I cannot.
Okay. What about any of the tertiary development?
In my mind, I guess bottom line for me, I think this could use another few years to really bring out more. That it's the bottle age is a little light.
I would 100% agree that this wine has got a further evolution to go through. Yes, I would agree with that. And we'll talk about your other comment, perhaps after somebody else has given me another opinion. But thanks, Dave. That's great. Thank you for that.
Willing to.
Anybody else?
Yeah, come on. Someone else is going to be brave.
I'm looking for Leslie Ray. I'm just going to unmute you. Over to you.
Okay, I'm being brave.
Hey, Leslie.
Hi. So I think that it is very good, and I found 3 of the 4 criterion.
Wonderful. That's great. So tell me what you picked out.
The balance, complexity, intensity. For me, I could experience them. The length was didn't last a long time, was short. So that were my 3 out of 4 criteria.
I'll happily take that. Happily take that. Anybody else want to give me an opinion? Remembering that there are no wrong answers, right?
We're not allowed to give you opinions.
Yeah, of course you can give me your opinion.
Well, we already gave our opinion by buying it.
No more hands. Nobody else feeling brave.
Nobody else is feeling brave. Okay.
Oh, hang on. I think Esther might be.
Go on, Esther.
John. I just wanted to say we didn't have a bottle of this wine, so it got shipped to New York, and I'm quarantining in DC. We tuned in mostly just to learn from you and to participate, but we've loved hearing everyone else's notes and comments on it. And the first thing we said to each other was, God, I can't wait to drink this wine and rewatch this video.
Leslie, I don't mind. I don't know if you would mind us calling you when we get the shipment, and I think it would be a lot of fun, and you have a cute dog.
With the greatest pleasure. Carol and Steve know how to get hold of me. I would be delighted to.
Great.
Yay.
So thank you, everybody, for weighing in on that. That was our contribution.
So, Beth, could we have a look at my conclusions?
Okay.
So I had this wine as a deep ruby. I had the nose as pronounced. I had clear primary, secondary, and tertiary aromas on the nose. And I marked the development, the state of development as developing. I marked the wine as dry with medium plus acidity, medium plus tannin, but those tannins are fine and ripe. They are not harsh and green. High alcohol, full body, pronounced flavor intensity. I was able to detect on the palate all of the things that I could detect on the nose. And I actually gave this wine a long finish. Now, I think that might have something to do with when I tasted it. I should have asked Leslie if she'd eaten.
Well, my good friend Leslie Olson invited us to participate, and this morning she dropped off a basket of cheese and crackers and salami and olives. So we've been enjoying the buffet as well as the wine.
Right, okay, because and you've been eating as you've been drinking.
Yes.
So I have to tell you, I tasted before I ate, and that's probably why we've got a difference of opinion on the food.
I see.
Okay, that's great. So I rated it as drink now, but potential for further aging. So 100% with Dave on that. I think this has got a good 5 years potential for keeping. I felt actually that this wine was outstanding, and it gave me such great pleasure to rate a cooperative wine as an outstanding wine. I can only give you my word, because I am here on my own in lockdown in Languedoc, that I did do a little one-legged chicken dance when I rated a cooperative wine as an outstanding wine. It was an extremely proud moment for me, and it made me super happy that Carol and Steve had come across this. There is one tiny thing that I was disappointed in. That is when I pulled the cork.
Yep, I agree.
I think a wine of this stature and a wine of this ability to age deserved a better cork than this has.
I agree totally.
You know, we can save the cork screw cap versus cork debate for another day if you like. I'm perfectly happy to engage with anybody on that one as well. But I think for I don't know what this retails at in the US.
Maybe 25 or something.
No, it's more than that.
It's $25.99.
Okay, so I think this is a lot of bang for your buck.
We've got a couple of raised hands for questions as well, if that's okay, Kate?
Absolutely, fire away.
I'm going to start with Leslie Olson and unmute you.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm just going to say I'm having so much fun. This is really exciting, so thank you. One question is, we were told to uncork the wine, pour a glass, and let it wait for an hour, which we did. And when we have done wine in the past, we were always told that we should taste it immediately to see how it develops over time, and if it's too, you know, if it falls apart or this or that or whatever. So I was wondering about that instruction, and if we should, where we would apply that instruction. And then the second question I have is if I could put Marcel on the spot, because I'm super curious.
Sorry, mate. So let me answer your first question, and then we'll go pick on Marcel. So this is quite a dangerous territory for me to be giving blanket advice, okay? But I'm going to give you just a few pointers. When you are dealing with reductive grapes, now reductive means that they repel oxygen, okay? Syrah is a reductive grape, Cabernet Sauvignon is a reductive grape, Nebbiolo is a reductive grape. We could go on and on and on. If you are dealing with a reductive grape, what happens is during the fermentation process, it is exposed to more oxygen than oxidative grapes, like Grenache, for example, or like Gamay, for example. What can happen is with reductive grapes, you are not very careful, you can end up with what are called mercaptins or pyrazines, which is kind of like a little bit like bottle stink.
So does that, we've had those wines where you kind of feel like they're almost moldy. Is that what you're talking about?
It could be. I mean, it could be that you've also got a corked wine, but sometimes you can get wines where they just smell a bit sulfury or a bit closed and a bit, yeah. just a little bit unpleasant. And the best thing that you can do in that case is the advice that you've been given, which is pour out a small glass, which opens up the surface area that oxygen can interact with the wine, and just leave the bottle alone for an hour. That's absolutely perfect advice. If you're dealing with oxidative grapes, in theory, you shouldn't really need to do too much at all. Marcello.
Marcel is now unmuted.
We're coming,
Hi, guys.
baby.
I want to say one thing, which is on our website, if you click on the name of the wine, almost all of the wine descriptions were written by Marcel. So
I love doing that.
Leslie has put you in the mastermind big black chair. She wants to know your opinion of this wine.
Well, actually, I have to be honest, I didn't have a glass in front of me. I just wanted to touch base with you and see how this Zoom tasting is going as a spectator, you know.
But Marcel has tried this wine in the past, and I think was quite.
I fully agree. For a wine from a cooperative cellar, it's smashing. Yeah. It has lots of character, I know, from tasting and tasting note writing, and it's a, yeah, like you said, a bang for your buck.
There you go, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Merci beaucoup.
We have a couple more hands, if that's okay. We've got one from Marla and Dave again, so I'm going to go to them.
Where have they gone? There they are.
So I have a quick question for you, going back a few minutes. What's a one-legged chicken dance look like?
That's a great question.
You know what? If you hang around until I get a bit further down this bottle, you might get to see it. Or if I promise to do it at the white tasting, then you'll have to come back.
Yeah. So on that note, I just wanted to tell everybody, a lot of people sent me messages that they already drank this wine, so we didn't tell them soon enough that this was going to be the wine. So we are going in June, after the May Club shipment goes out, we are going to do a white wine tasting, but we're going to tell you in the box with the wines when they come. We'll tell you which one it is so you don't drink it, because Kate is going to do a white wine and maybe we'll see her one-legged chicken dance.
And there's another question as well from Ioana. I think I'm pronouncing that right. Apologies if I'm not.
That's totally fine. It's actually a question from Vlad.
Yes, actually, I have a question, and I wanted to ask Ioana, and she said, "Why don't you ask Kate?" Because
hit me with it. Come on then.
Yeah. So you've made a comment, and Marcel, which, by the way, good to see you again, Marcel. So so you mentioned that you're very pleasantly surprised to be able to rate a cooperative wine as outstanding.
Yeah.
And that got me thinking, and I might be the only one not knowing this perfectly, but I would like to know why that is. What is it about a cooperative that, and especially this wine, that you're actually pleasantly surprised? That adjective right there that you used. Can you describe cooperatives and cooperative wines to us, and go in that vein a little bit?
Yeah, of course, with great pleasure. So the surface area of Languedoc, the grape growing surface area of Languedoc was for a very, very, very long time. In fact, I'm going to say as recently as the 1980s, was dominated by grape growing by farmers rather than winemakers. And the techniques that were used in cooperatives hadn't really changed. They hadn't really updated their equipment, they hadn't updated their processes, and they were paid by weight of fruit rather than by quality of fruit. So as long as you rocked up on your designated day and you said to the chief of the co-op, "Dude, I've got my 20 tons of Carignan for you, give me my 8,000 euros, they would take the Carignan away and they would vinify it. No matter whether the Carignan was ripe, whether the fruit was good, or whether the fruit was rotten, or whether it had been irrigated illegally, or no matter what, they paid out on receipt of weight of fruit. So what's special about this wine is not only is the fruit hand-picked, but it's also selected from particular sites. And the name itself, if we've got any French speakers here, the name of the wine is L'accord parfait, which means the perfect match. So what we've got here really is the ideal match of pride in grape growing and pride in wine making, but from two very different sets of people. If you are a grape grower who makes his own wine, you are understandably proud of the product that you produce. But if all you do is grow grapes for a volume market, for volume sales, you might spray the flipping daylights out of your grapes. You might irrigate them to the point where they're producing 120 hecto per hectare. You know, you might dilute.
You're looking for the bottom line, in other words, right?
Flavor, quality, but also winemaking technique in the case of this wine. That's why I'm so impressed with it. You know, most cooperatives for red fruits, they'll just destem. They'll throw the grapes into a concrete or a stainless steel vat. They will allow the fermentation to be dictated to by a selected yeast, which means it's going to push that ferment through without any difficulties, any hiccups. It'll be fairly fast, fairly clean, fairly reliable, and fairly dull. Once the fermentation is done, they're going to draw off the free run juice. They're going to put the free run juice in one tank. They're going to take the must out, press the must, put the pressed juice in another tank. And then who knows, they might lump the whole lot together and sell it under one cuvee, and you never quite know what it is. So you might have grapes from 50 different farmers who've done 50 different things to their crops, all having a different ethos about how they should be growing their product. All those grapes just jumbled into one bottle. Whereas in this bottle, this has been parcel selected, hand-picked, and 3 different winemaking techniques applied to what's gone into the bottle. That's why it's special.
Okay, okay, I can follow that. Absolutely. Yeah? Yes, thank you.
You're welcome.
I think that was the final question. There's no more hands, and I can't see anybody frantically waving at me. Oh, hello. I think I have got a waiver.
It's lovely Dawn.
No, I just wanted to thank you guys so much. I was supposed to be over there, and I've been to the Languedoc many times, and I know Kate and Marcel personally, and this is really a treat. If you can go there, please go. The wine is lovely. The whole region is lovely, and I'm so grateful to be able to have some wine from there. You all do a great job with this wine club, and I really just wanted to thank you. I've had Fitou, I don't know if it's the same blend from Katie Jones before, and this is really good wine. I just really wanted to thank you, and it almost makes me cry because I wanted to be there so much in June and can't go. Hopefully I can go in October, but anyway. Thank you, Kate.
Thank you, Dawn.
Thank you very much.
Tell Petra hello. And if you guys can go to the Languedoc, go and see Kate and Marcel and buy wine and drink wine and see the Cathar castles and all the beautiful things there. I wish I was there right now.
Yeah, we wish you were too.
You know, the great thing about wine tasting, you know, it's there's no, as Kate said earlier, there's no wrong answer. Whether it's medium bodied or full bodied, whether it's this kind of red fruit or that kind of red fruit, or this kind of, you know, black fruit or whatever. I mean, the fact that you can take the time to savor the wine and appreciate it and think about it, and I know I can speak for both Carol and me that we really appreciate everybody's support, and just thank you all for everything.
And yeah, thank you so much for joining us tonight. It's been an absolute delight to meet you all and being so forthcoming with your questions. It's been fabulous. It's been a really engaging crowd. So thank you very much.
We'll see you in June. We'll all be back in June.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Everybody.
Thanks,
Back soon.